Our next guest is one of the busiest personalities in MMA, a host of his podcast, You're Welcome, ESPN analyst, World Series of Fighting commentator and author, and the man behind Bad Guy Inc. It's a pleasure to welcome the American gangster himself, Chael Sonnen, back to the program.
I wouldn't miss it, man. I'm happy to be here, fellas.
It's always great when you come on the show. Welcome back. There's a lot of great fights to talk about at the end of the year, but a card that isn't getting the attention that it should during this busy time is World Series of Fighting 26. Chael, we know Tyron Spong is out with an injury, but what fight stands out to you from the card so far that is a must-watch for the fans?
Well, always for me the main event. I love and Lance Palmer is so good. The guy that he's fighting, Almeida, has earned the shot. It wasn't just picked for a number one contender like a lot of times we have. There was actually an elimination fight. It was Almeida versus Almeida, no relation. He's a rough guy, and Lance Palmer does go a little bit unnoticed. He's good. Lance Palmer's lost one fight. He's the real deal. He trains at one of the best gyms in the world. Those guys vouch for him constantly, and he's got his hands full here. So I like that fight, but I get your point on Spong, man. That stinks. I was really excited for that fight, and I thought he had his hands full too. For as far as an MMA fight goes, I thought that he was in a good battle too, and I was really excited to see him.
Well, speaking of your relationship with World Series of Fighting, it seemed like you had a great time working with him in your commentating role. Tell us about your experience. How much do you enjoy it?
Well, I always prefer to participate. My career started as a fan, and that's how my career will end. I'm just a big fan of the sport. And if there's some way that I can be involved, even better. As far as the World Series of Fighting goes, those guys are great guys. They work really hard. They understand the sport, and there's not a lot of people that do. There's not a lot of people that you can say that about. The business of MMA. As you guys know, it's hard to turn a buck in MMA, and the people that really understand how they're very few, and these guys are passionate, work hard. They got my respect.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, we're all MMA fans at the end of the day. We all watch it from our living rooms, but behind the scenes, just in regard to your commentary, what are some of the aspects of doing commentary that can be hard that fans, may not really think about?
Well, I'll tell you some things that I never thought about was the way I always saw it from my living room was, some guy gets a really good seat and then he just talks about what he sees. I felt like I was always doing commentary in my living room, with my buddies. We'd all be talking about the fights the whole time the fights were going on. And I kind of thought that's all the announcers were doing. And when you get there, there's a whole bunch of moving parts. You've got the earpiece in, somebody's feeding you information constantly that you have to hear, compartmentalize, regurgitate while you're speaking and watching something else. You got to follow your monitors. You got to know how to get in and out of commercial breaks. None of this stuff is rocket science. I'm not trying to impress anybody with the moving parts of commentating, but there are some moving parts of commentating which I personally just didn't know.
Yeah, it's certainly very interesting from the other perspective just to hear you talk about that. Now, last time when you were on the program, Chael, you discussed how little Holly Holm's boxing titles mattered in MMA. Just want to get your thoughts on the way she handled herself here in Melbourne against Ronda Rousey.
She looked great. There's no way around it. And she had. Here's what's really interesting about that fight for me is Holly has not looked great. Holly had two fights in the UFC before that fight. Her first fight was about 90% stand-up, which is where she was supposed to be. So talented, and I mean, it was tit for tat. I watched the fight, and I can't even tell you who her opponent was. And Holly barely won, and it was in her realm. I thought that was really telling. Her second fight in the UFC was a little more dominant, but still underwhelming, and it was about 75% in the stand-up realm, where she was supposed to be this big threat. So I thought my analysis of her, based on the evidence I was giving, was very fair. Her fight with Ronda, she never looked so good. This wasn't a matter of having two dominant champions fight each other. You had one dominant champion in Ronda, and you had one girl that did not look very good. And she goes out and she just has this amazing, dominant, breathtaking performance. And to do that when the world championship is on the line is very rare. It usually goes the other way. Usually when you have those major pressure fights, people underperform, and sometimes even in an underperformance, it's enough to win. But to do what she did and just bring everything together at the right time, it's a really rare feat in sport.
A lot of people are giving a lot of credit to, obviously, the team at Jackson Winklejohns, Greg Jackson, Izzy Martinez, and Coach Mike Winklejohn. You've had a very close relationship with your coach, Scott McQuarrie, in your fighting career. What do you think about the game plan that Edmund came up with for Ronda in this fight? He caught a lot of flack for it. Do you think it was flawed in your opinion, and was his advice to her in between rounds constructive?
There's a couple of words that I wish didn't exist in MMA because they're fake. I could write whole books on them. They're good for commentary. They're good talking points for time like this, but they're not real. The first is game plan. There is no such thing. A person's skills are their skills, and you go in and fight. If you want to talk strategy or use a word like that, I could play along a little bit, but there's no such thing as a game plan, and people love to talk about that, particularly when they win. Well, I had this great game plan. What are you talking about, man? You had 2 arms and you had 2 legs and you went and used them. That's what happened. The next one that I love is footwork, which is just a silly, silly term. But again, I could fill up a whole hour talking about footwork because nobody knows what in the hell it means. It's how your feet move. That ain't rocket science. It's your feet move. That's footwork, and your skills apparently somehow become your game plan. So, look, as far as Edmund goes, he told her to do stuff that was within her skill set. There was no switching it up. That's in make-believe land. If somebody was watching this and goes, wow, she had a spinning wheelhouse kick that was there. I can't believe she didn't take it. Well, she doesn't know a spinning wheelhouse kick. So there's no point in bringing it up. I think I understand the criticism of Edmund in terms of, telling her to go back out there and stand up and try to clinch, but that's what her skills are. Ronda's not a wrestler. As a wrestler, we change elevation and we penetrate. We cover ground to get our hands on somebody and drag them down to the mat. She's not a wrestler. She's a judo player. That's a straight-up atmosphere. She's got to stand straight up in her posture. Well, that's the exact same posture that you have to have for kickboxing. So it also worked against her. If she was a wrestler and she could change elevation under those shots and cover some ground, that's a whole nother skill set. So you can talk about game plan all you want. If it's not within her skill set, it's not there. It's a ridiculous topic.
That's a great point there. I guess a lot of people are wondering, do you think that going into this fight, knowing what they knew about Holly Holm, she should have added a couple more skills to her tool belt maybe in this fight?
Well, that's also a tough thing to do. Those skills that you do for a fight, you start working on when you're 8 and 9 and 10 years old. And by the time you're 12 and 13 and 14, you're a finished product. The only thing that happens in those next 10 or 15 years, you can refine things and you can mature, which comes with a natural strength. You can get some more experience, but your skills are really done back then. I go to practice every day, twice a day. I hate it. I'm there so much. And if I'm lucky in the course of a year, I'll pick up 1 or 2 things, and it's closer to 1. And that's not because I'm not learning and I don't have great coaches. It's just my learning curve really slows down. I was exposed to everything from ages 9 to 15. So it's just kind of a hard thing to do. So Ronda goes into a training camp for a specific opponent, Holly Holm. She has about 90 days of preparation. You can't pick up a new skill in 90 days. And the same thing goes with Edmund. People on the outside will look at the 60 seconds he gets to get in Ronda's ear between rounds and act as though he's going to teach her something. It's not going to happen. Edmund's psychological approach could be something we don't even understand. Perhaps he was trying to calm her down. Perhaps he was trying to give her confidence. Perhaps that's what Ronda responds best to. He's her coach. I have to assume that he knows. And I do know some coaches that lie to their athletes. They'll tell them they're losing when they're winning. They'll tell them they're winning when they're losing. I don't subscribe to it. I don't like it myself. I don't do it as a coach. I hated it as an athlete. I need you to be real straight with me. But that was my psychology. Not everybody's the same. So it's really tough to understand. People are saying that now, Ronda in a rematch with Holly. It's like, guys, we can do that. We can go out and do a cash grab, and that'll do huge numbers. But that fight wasn't in the realm of competitiveness. There is no 6-month period. I think they're going to target UFC 200 for that rematch, which is scheduled for, I believe, July 7th. It might be July 3rd. But at any rate, there's nothing you can do in 7 months to close a gap that is this wide.
Let me ask you this, Chael. You have made some comments in the past about how you believe that Ronda Rousey was created by the media. Just for the fans who didn't catch it, can you explain your thoughts behind that?
So, Ronda's great, and Ronda's a personal friend, and I don't want any of this to come off as bad. It's just I'm giving an analysis of what happens sometimes. The media doesn't know what they're looking at. That's not an insult to the media. The media shouldn't. There's not very many people that fight. Fighting's a weird thing to do. Not a whole lot of parents throw their kids into a car and drive them to a gym, pay somebody $100 a month, and tell them, have my kid get punched and kicked for the next 2 hours. It's a weird thing to do. So because it's a rarity, people just don't know what they're looking at. That's why you can get guys that can go on and be commentators of fighting and fill up a show talking about footwork and game plans because they don't know what they're talking about and their listeners don't know what they're talking about. So you can have all of these mythical things that just don't have anything to do with anything. So here's the deal with Ronda. Ronda goes out. She's in a division that if you want to be, if you're a top 15 fighter in the world at any point in your life, that's a lifetime achievement. You can go and tell your grandkids about that your granddad was top 15 in the world. That's a really exciting thing. In that division, if you want to be top 15, all you have to do is make the weight class and raise your hand. There are not 15 girls on planet Earth that are fighting. It's a really rare thing. So the division, when a division sucks and you're an analyst and you want to be respected in the sport, you can't come out and say a division sucks. It doesn't sound right, particularly when you're talking about women. So you have to change your words and say, well, the division is developing. So gentlemen, I will say to you now, the division is developing. So when you have a developing division, somebody's going to take it over. So Ronda took it over, and good for her. But the reality is, that's what it is. It's a developing division. Now, anybody that is created by the media has one thing in common, and that is Los Angeles, California. I'll explain. Bruce Lee, who everybody covets as this wonderful fighter. Bruce Lee was a wimp. Bruce Lee couldn't fight his way out of a wet paper bag. But he lived in Los Angeles, California. So he was able to bring people that were in the media, producers, directors, future actors. He took them in their backyard. He kicked their ass. He was a wimp, but he found people that were wimpier than he was. And eventually they got to media outlets and TV and movies, and they all spread the legend of Bruce Lee. So good for him. There's a guy named Judo Gene Lebell. Now, I don't want to tease Gene Lebell. He's 1,000 years old. But Gene Lebell has this huge myth around him that he was some kind of a tough guy. Gene Lebell in his prime could not make the varsity wrestling team at my local high school, but he lived in Los Angeles, California. So he'd bring guys into his garage and he'd put them in arm bars and chokeholds. And again, Gene Lebell was a wimp, but the guys that he beat up were bigger wimps. And they went on to make it in TV and movie, and they went and spread the legend. And that's the way it goes. I mean, you could keep going down the list. Steven Seagal, all these myths, Van Damme, all these guys that suck. They all had one thing in common. That was Los Angeles, California. So Ronda lived in Los Angeles, California. That's where she lives right now. So she can get major media outlets and major people that are famous and have a voice, to go out and perpetuate things. And she's a solid, durable fighter. But the truth on judo, guys, is judo has never had a level of effectiveness in MMA. There's never been a judo champion in the history of the UFC. There's never been anybody even close. There's never been somebody that fought for the title that was a judo practitioner. There was never anybody in an elimination fight that was a judo practitioner. It's a terrible, ineffective form of combat. And if you knew the history of judo, you'd lose all your respect for it. I'll tell you it real quick if you want it, but judo's very ineffective. So you have Ronda that's a really good competitor, but she comes from a sport that's just not very effective.
Wow, some great points made, Chael. Now we want to quickly switch topics.
Those are Those are fantastic, but nobody's even heard these kind of points. Nobody has the courage to tell you these points. As a matter of fact, you know what? I'll give you the history of judo. Judo sucks so bad. Now, again, I don't want any... I can't say enough great things about Ronda as a competitor and as a person. The sport of judo is a joke. So, not only do you guys not do judo, not only would I doubt you know anyone that does judo. It's a very rare thing.
We do a little bit of judo and sambo, but not too much.
I would challenge you. I think you're bluffing. I'll challenge you right now.
We didn't say we're good. We're just saying we've done some.
We get our ass kicked, but we do it.
I'll make my point. And you can disprove me. If you're telling me the truth, either one of you, go home tonight, take a picture of your judo gi and tweet it to me. If you do that, you win this argument. And if you don't, I accept your defeat. But I'm going to give you the history of judo anyway. And I don't think I'm going to be getting that tweet, gentlemen. But
would a sambo jacket do?
I'll tell you this, guys. In 1980, the United States boycotted the Olympic Games in 1980. They were held in Moscow, and we had these big political differences at the time. But in 1980, the Olympic trials for judo were held in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So they were held on a Saturday. On Friday night, a group of wrestlers that were not very good. They were not the varsity guys at Oklahoma State University, but a group of wrestlers were out drinking. They saw a flyer in a bar for the judo Olympic trials. They get in a car drunk. They've never done judo. They don't know the rules, and they drive to the Olympic trials, and all four of them make the Olympic team. Judo, so none of them got to go to the Olympics because we ended up boycotting, but all four of them made the team. 4 for 4. 4 guys that could not make the varsity spot at their local colleges, wrestlers that didn't even know the rules, made the judo team. The International Judo Federation, because of these 4 drunken wrestlers, had to switch the rules for judo to change the way a takedown was scored so that people that suck at judo could make Olympic and keep the sport alive. That's how bad that sport sucks. That's just a reality. Be as mad as you want. You're not going to send me a tweet of your gi from judo because you don't have one. And that fact that I just made isn't going to change.
Well, yeah, we're not the biggest judo fans. We do all different martial arts, but look, it's a great point.
That's what we call a backpedal, my fine friend.
Well,
and
do you really want to see me and Casper in our judo gis? I mean, it's not the best.
I will accept if you can just go home and take a photograph. You don't even have to put it on. Take a photo in your closet. I'm challenging you. I don't think you have one.
Would a sambo jacket do?
I'm your guys' friend. I think you're making it up when you say you do judo. I don't think you do. Nobody does. It's a rare thing.
All right, well, we'll get into our closets and take a few photos and send you some photos later, but we want to quickly switch topics to a person that's counted as a legend in MMA and Mirko Cro Cop pulling out of UFC career, citing issues with his shoulder. It was then revealed that he used some HGH to help recovery as a last-ditch effort to make the fight. He wrote in his blog that he was a desperate man, and to him, this was the only way to fix his shoulder. Fans are sort of not sure what to make of the whole situation. What did you make of it, Chael?
Okay, so here's the thing. If Cro Cop is telling the truth, he might gain points with me, if you can believe it. If failing a test is a terrible thing, you're talking to a guy that has. If you fail, if he came out and just told us straight up what happened, not only do I personally forgive him, but he will gain points because telling the truth in a time of embarrassment like that, it's a really hard thing to do. Sometimes you're best to not make a statement at all. Just hold back, wait, accept it yourself, and eventually come out later. On what we're going to know, those test results aren't back yet, but they're going to be back within the next week. And if Cro Cop told the truth, man, wow, that's a rare thing, and it means something to me. And, growth hormone gets a really bad rap. People think it's a steroid. Growth hormone is not a steroid. And you won't meet a doctor that tells you anything bad about growth hormone use. Now, make sure you hear my words here. I'm not talking about growth hormone abuse. Mm-hmm. Abuse is totally different than use. You won't meet that's a big challenge I'm making you. Okay, this is as simple as you finding a gi in your closet and sending me a tweet. I'm telling you, you won't find a doctor. You know how many doctors there are? Of course you'll find. No, you will not find a single doctor to put down growth hormone use. Abuse is a totally different deal. So I kind of understand where Cro Cop came from. The second he did the test, he goes, look, the gig is up. I was taking this. I know it's banned. I was trying to help my show. I understand that. The rules are the rules. And if he told us the truth, which is, again, as a human being, that's hard to do in the time frame that he did it. But if he did, man, I respect it a lot.
Interesting. I want to touch on something, Chael. When you were on the show last, you told us that you'd be taking on Josh Barnett and Metamoris. Since then, Josh has come out and said, his quote, "Nothing has been signed on my end, but man, 20 minutes with Chael, I would be embarrassed to let it go that long, to be perfectly honest. It wouldn't be a match." Just wondering, what are your thoughts on his comments, and is this still a match you'd like to have, and is there any updates with this match?
Well, I have no update. So, I have no update on that. There was going to be a Metamoris held on October 23rd. And that was the event that we were looking to get matched up on. Around October 25th, that dawned on me, and I thought, well, I wonder what happened on that Metamoris. So I went and I looked it up, and I guess the show didn't even happen. So I don't really know what their schedule is looking like, but I was training for Josh every day, and that ended. I still think down the road we could get matched up, but he just signed a fight. So somewhere in there where he and I were going to get matched up, he ended up signing to fight Roy Nelson, and now he just signed to fight Ben Rothwell. So I don't know. That's kind of up to Josh. Does he? If you're training MMA, can you just slip in on a Saturday and do a grappling match and chalk it up to a workout? Is that too risky of a move? I don't know, man.
When you sort of made the announcement on the show last time, had you already gone through all the spoken to Metamoris, and were they in the planning stages? Obviously, we don't know what happened with the event, or was that sort of a call out to lure Josh Barnett on your end, and nothing had actually been planned?
No, we were going to wrestle. I didn't have a contract, but I always get asked, do you have a contract? But this industry doesn't really work that way. It moves forward really, really fast. You got to be able to do things on your word. And we had an agreement, but I will tell you this in Metamoris' defense, they did not give us a date. They told us the match was going to happen, but they didn't give us a date. And so I went onto their website. Their next show was October 23rd. I deduced that it would be on that date. I think that was a fair assumption, and I was wrong, but then they also just didn't hold the show at all. They just never had that show just didn't happen. It was going to be called Metamoris 7. It just never took place, and I don't have the inside scoop on that.
Finally, Chael, as we go into UFC 194 next week, you did a very, very good interview with GSP.
Whoa. Did you say finally?
Well, we know how busy you are. You're the busiest man in MMA. We don't want to take up too much of your time.
You're talking to the biggest draw in the sport. You realize when you hit the red button and hang up on me, you hang up on all your listeners as well.
Well, last time you gave us a joke as you went out as well.
Really slow question.
I mean, it's not by any means the last question, but I guess it's one of the final topics we'll talk about. If you want to sit here and talk to us all day, we're more than happy to have you. But I'm
going to do a show for 24 hours. We'll do a marathon.
I'm going to be here until you back down on your fake judo gi in the closet comment. I mean, you got to give this one to me, all right? I kind of got you on that one, didn't I?
You didn't get us.
Chael kind of jammed you up on the whole tweet me a picture of your gi routine, didn't
We will tweet you a picture of us in our Sambo jackets. How's that?
You gotta give me this one. I got you. All right. I guess time will tell. Go ahead with the next
We'll tweet you some other pictures as well. But finally, as we go into UFC 194 next week, you had a very good interview with GSP. Obviously, a lot of our listeners check out your wonderful podcast. You're welcome. And there was a comparison made by GSP on your program about yourself getting into Anderson Silva's head and Conor McGregor getting into Jose Aldo's head. I'm just wanting to know, Chael, do you see any similarities in these situations?
Okay, so this is a huge fight. Conor and Jose, I mean, this is just such a big fight. It's the biggest fight in the history of the featherweight division, and that's how they're promoting it. But I think when all is said and done, this may be the biggest fight in the history of the UFC. I think their numbers might do that well. We'll only know that in hindsight. Guys, I have never, and I know what I'm looking at. Okay, I know what I'm looking at every time. I had my first fight in 1997. When a guy does an interview, I know what he's really saying. Okay, when a guy takes his T-shirt off, I can tell you every substance he put in his body. I know exactly what I'm looking at every time. I have never seen a fight of this magnitude where both guys are so sure that they're going to lose. Every time you have a huge fight in boxing, in wrestling, in MMA, Both guys are sure they're going to win. They really believe it. These guys are so scared of one another, and these guys are so positive that the other guy's going to beat them. I've never seen anything like it. Conor McGregor is feathering a nest for a fall, and it's so apparent to a guy that understands the psychology of sport. I mean, he's starting to talk. He just did an interview where he was saying the secret ingredient to success is failure, and nobody can really be the best until they get beaten. It's like, hey, listen, man, that's just not true. I could name a bunch of guys that went undefeated that never got lost. You don't have to get beat. But it was a weird thing for him to say, and he was feathering this nest. And then Jose Aldo, listen, this guy's a chicken. I can't even tell you how good Jose Aldo is, but he doesn't think it. When George St. Pierre retired and John Jones was absent, I had Jose Aldo the number one fighter in the world pound for pound. That's how highly I think of him. That guy's a chicken. He's pulled out of 5 fights. He's already pulled out of this one once. And Conor doesn't think he can. Neither one of these guys thinks they're going to win this fight. I've never seen anything like it. And the average viewer doesn't get that. It's entertaining, it's fun, it's all of these things. But I'm telling you, straight up as an athlete that gets sports psychology, these guys are scared of each other.
Wow, interesting. You brought up a point, Chael, that Jose Aldo may be actually getting into Conor McGregor's head with some of the interviews McGregor's been doing lately. Obviously, you've been watching him. Can you just explain your theory behind that? And do you think seeing maybe Ronda Rousey lose and some of the backlash she's gone makes possibly Conor worry about losing more?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if that has, if one would have to do with another, but, I mean, look, Conor didn't look great in his last fight. He did to me. I thought Conor looked great in his last fight because I thought he was greatly overmatched. I thought Chad Mendes was a greatly superior fighter. And, Chad went out and proved that he couldn't hold up. He couldn't hold up, and Conor held up really well. So for me, I thought Conor looked really good, but I think he walked out of the ring and goes, man, I got my hand raised, but I got my ass kicked. I think maybe that's what happened because his confidence is definitely dipped, and that happens, when you get a reality check. It can go one way or the other, and I don't know for sure if that's what happened. I just know when you look at Conor, and there's certain information I have, gentlemen, because of where I work and being in the industry that I just can't reveal. So as I'm answering this question for you right now, I'm trying to process what I can say versus what I can't. But I can tell you. I guess I'll leave it at this, man. Getting this fight together has not been easy on Dana White, and if Dana wants to share that, that's his story to tell, not mine.
Wow. Well, we'd love to know what you know, but we're going to want to get you in trouble. Final question, Chael. You mentioned how Ronda Rousey was created by the media. On paper, we have one of the best pound-for-pound fighters, like you mentioned, in Jose Aldo taking on Conor McGregor, and many people believe McGregor is going to win. Do you think that McGregor may have been created by the media as well?
No, but I'll tell you what I did. I used to think that. Now, you got to understand, first off, that division is, oh my God, it is so nasty. There are 10 John Joneses in that division, okay? Don't forget, Frankie Edgar, one of the greatest fighters to have ever done it, doesn't have the belt in that division. That's how hard that division is. So you have to really put that in perspective. The women's division, what did we agree to call it? Developing earlier. 145 pounds is iron on iron. If you're even in the top 5 conversation, you are a nasty, nasty individual. So no, Conor was not created by the media. He's in an incredible weight class. And he's got a belt in that weight class. So no, he's the real deal, and he's better than I thought he was with what he did with Chad Mendes, the way he was able to weather that storm and push through and take those punches and scramble off the bottom and hold up and land those punches and kicks. Man, he's a very special talent for sure. He is not created by the media. Is he the best fighter in the world? No, I sure don't think so. I would certainly think that Jose is going to whip him pretty good, and I would think that Frankie Edgar would whip him pretty good, and I think there's some guys at 155 where he's headed, but that's not a lot of guys to name, man. I mean, that's a really, really tough division. If you're anywhere in that top 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, you're a good fighter. And the girls division, it's a developing division.
Very, very insightful as always, Chael. Guys, you can check out You're Welcome every week on Podcast One, and make sure to watch World Series of Fighting 26 on December 18th, coming from the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas. For Australians, that will be on December 19th due to the time difference. Also, don't forget to jump on www.badguyinc.com and grab some of Chael's t-shirts for a great Christmas present. Quick question, Chael. We see there's some Italian, Brazilian, Irish bad guy t-shirts. Are there plans for an Australian bad guy t-shirt at some point, or are we just being overlooked?
Yes, it will be called England's Criminal.
Love it. As always, thank you so much for...
That's a good history lesson right there by old Chael P. Now I got your people going to the interwebs to see what it means.
Well, yeah, the people will be there with the pitchforks. As always, thank you so much for stopping by the show, Chael. We always enjoy it.
Whoa.
We're not done yet, apparently.
You guys have to go. I mean, what's the big hurry over there? Your internet connection is costing you so much you got to kick old Chael off the air? I have a question for you. My turn for a question.
Here we go. We remember what happened last time, Chael, when you did this to us, but go ahead.
Well, no, I was a dick to you last time. I was going to be very sweet. I was going to ask you about your girl. How is your girl doing?
Our girl? Where is this going? We don't share a girl. She's not like a communal girl.
No, I meant yours. I was being respectful because the last time I saw her was about 3 a.m. and she was awfully drunk. I hope she made it home safe. All right, gentlemen, with that, farewell.
See you, Chael.
Thanks, Chael. Always a pleasure.